Please replace the speaker on its rack when you're ready to leave. Failure to do so will damage both the speaker and your car. We'll be grateful, and so will the patrons who follow you.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
But I mean, we still can't review it unless everybody's
Yeah.
able to see it. It's going to end up like Parasite, where I saw it like 5 weeks before you guys.
Right. So are we in?
We're in.
We're in. Yeah.
We're in. We're swimming. We're swimming,
Yeah.
baby. Welcome back, everybody. All three of us are here. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
So let's get into it. Let's do a little bit of news, and
Yeah.
then we'll talk about our two main features here,
Mhm.
because that's pretty much how this show works. News item. Are you ready for this? Mulan. You can watch it. Disney
We can
Plus.
watch it.
If you have Disney Plus, September 4th, but it's going to set you back $30.
There is a considerable fee.
I think the pricing is really interesting. Okay. I think this depends, like the value you get out of this kind of depends on what you would have done for the theater. Like if you're a family of 4, and say if you live in Chicago, even the matinee movie costs $11 to go to a matinee here.
Right.
So your family of 4, right up front, $44 for the tickets. Then you get an $8 bucket of popcorn, candy for the kids,
Yep.
Drinks, blah, blah, blah. If you drove there, you have to pay for parking. I mean, like, it could set you back $75, $80
Oh,
every time
easily.
you go to the movies. So for a family like that, if you're all going to watch Mulan, $30 is a bargain. But I feel like the price for maybe one person, or I don't know, I think people might balk. They might be like, oh, well, it's a streaming service. Why doesn't it come with my streaming?
that I'm paying already for the streaming service.
Right,
That's
correct.
the reason I get
Yeah.
it. And now
But-
they're going to start charging me for movies. This may not be the first one that they do this.
Oh, no, this, yeah, if anything, I think Disney is really going to pay close attention to this and see if this is somehow a sustainable model.
I don't think it's sustainable for every
I
movie.
agree. Because even, so go like Relic. What we pay, 19?
Yeah. But is this going to give them the freedom to start charging for TV shows now?
The circumstances that we're under right now is just it's forcing them. This is a movie that is losing money by the day, sitting there, not being watched. And we've talked about this since the shutdown. This and Tenet are the two big movies. No one else is budging until these two movies do something. And it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. And as far as, I mean, if you're going to, Disney's like sitting there going, what do we do? Tenet's like, screw it. We're going to just release it into whatever theaters are available, and we'll move forward from there. We're not dropping it on video on demand.
I'm worried that this is going to embolden that we may have to end up paying for Loki and things like that.
I don't think that people are really going to jump on this. If it wasn't for this show, I would not pay $30 to watch this.
See, now I think that I don't see this as a concern that Disney's going to start charging for other content. I think this is because they have a $300 million movie, and they need some kind of return on investment. They can't just drop this in Disney Plus for free.
Right.
Yeah, but say if it makes millions and millions, somebody in that boardroom is going to say, hey, people are going to pay for this. Why not that?
Well, if they
then they'll fall on their face when they start charging me $30 to watch Matrix 4.
I think that if they charge again for a movie, it's going to be for a theatrical release type film. It would be like for Black Widow or for The Eternals, for something else they have sitting in the can that's not making money for them. But
Right.
what I think they're doing a premium price on this in the hopes that they can recoup some of their investment.
Some of it, yeah.
I
I
mean,
agree. I think that this is just they had to do something.
like I said, for us, there's 3 of us. My whole family goes to every movie. That $30 is actually cheaper than it would cost for us to go to the film.
So go to your situation, which is the
Yeah.
fact. I would like to think that if they're releasing this on video on demand,
Mhm.
would they also release it to a movie theater like the Music Box, which is up and running at the same time?
I mean, maybe.
And if that was the
Yeah.
case,
Mhm.
would you would still pay more to go to get the theater experience?
Yes, you would, because if you're a
Yeah.
fan of this, if you watch this on
Right, you want to
and
see it
you
on the
love
big
it,
screen.
you want to see it. It's an event, so they
I
can
know.
market it as such.
I personally, if I had the choice, I would see it on the big screen.
I
But
agree,
if that's
yeah.
not an option, then I'm definitely going to rent it. Well, it wouldn't even be a rental. So apparently, once you pay the $30, you can watch it as many times as you want.
So you own it
Oh, that's
digitally
good.
at that point.
So yeah, I was actually very curious about that, and
Mm.
I dug up that information. I think it was in a CNET article I saw, and it's basically like, as long as you have a Disney Plus subscription, as long as you keep your subscription because you're buying it through Disney Plus,
Right.
then you can watch it as many times as you want. So if
So-
you look at it that way,
Right. So if you drop your Disney Plus, then you drop Mulan. as well.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be the most pirated movie in the last 20 years.
I'm sure. Well, I mean, this is the thing. We're sitting here saying, well, that price point might make people balk, but I also think how desperate people are for new movies, which Disney might be banking on. And I
Yeah.
think if they don't get enough people, getting it at that price point, obviously they'll,
Well, I think they will. I think this is going to be runaway. I don't think there's an issue with that. I think that they will get tons of hits on this, but you don't really get a sense of what these movies are making.
No, but you did. I mean, when they dropped Trolls, I mean, they were loud and proud, screaming
Yeah.
how much money.
Like,
they
I'd like
made.
to see how much money Invisible Man made compared to its theatrical run before COVID hit.
Right.
What is its box office figures, including streaming?
Yeah, I bet you more people
Off
probably
the
watch the
charts,
streaming.
right? Yeah.
So interesting. It's well, I mean, we'll be there, even if we're curled up
Yeah,
in our
we will.
couches, but we will be watching it. So I guess we'll see. I mean, I'm curious. Anybody out there listening, are you like, this is crazy, this is nuts, and I'm not doing it? And even if we record an episode, if no one watches it, they're not going to be listening to our review of it.
Do you know what I think is going to be interesting, though? There's always like a subset of people who are like, the X company is greedy and I won't do this.
Right,
Well,
yeah.
fine. Like, you don't,
Anti-corporate.
but
Then
you know
don't do
what?
it. Yeah.
You don't have to. No one's
Right,
making
correct.
you. That's the thing. No one's requiring you to pay $30 to see Mulan. If you don't want to watch it, you don't have to pay
Right.
the price.
But if you want to watch it, you do have to pay the price.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Price.
Pay the price.
Funny how that works. So, all right, we're going to get off this because obviously every week we just talk about Mulan. Eventually we'll get to see it.
Yeah.
Change our name to Mulan.
That and Tenet. Those two things.
Yeah,
that's all we talk about in the news every week is Mulan
Yeah.
and Tenet.
Well, let's move on then because another movie, Bill and Ted, Face the Music. Originally, I think it was set for September 4th, and they've now backed it. They've given us an extra week. So
Mhm.
it's dropping August 28th.
Interesting. I wonder if they did that knowing that Mulan
Oh, hell
was going to
yeah.
go on the same day.
Yeah,
And
and
if
that's but again, this is exactly what we keep talking about, which is nothing, and then a glut. It's just going to be a dump of all these movies at once, and poor New Mutants get swallowed up. So yeah, we have an extra week to watch Bill and Ted Face the Music. So I'm actually excited for that. Speaking of Bill and Ted, John Wick 4 and 5 have been greenlit. They will be filmed back to back.
Back to back,
Back
really?
to back. They're going full on Back to the Future 2 and 3. Yep. So kudos, they're moving forward, and yeah, we do need to do our Wick fix.
Someday you guys will watch John Wick.
Oh, we will.
It's going to be a 3-hour episode, 1 through 5.
Yep. So we got that to look forward to eventually. And the other news item, which I find really interesting, we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, the prequel for Grease, Summer Lovin'.
Mhm.
All right, we now have a confirmed sequel to Dirty Dancing with Jennifer Grey.
Okay.
I
So-
assume that she's going back as a parent.
Well, think about this. That movie was 33 years old.
Mhm.
So it takes place in 1963, And, in one of our episodes, we talked how soundtracks played so heavily into some of these movies that you can't separate them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely one of those movies that was entrenched in that soundtrack. So if you're going to try lightning in a bottle, and she's playing baby going back with her, she's dragging her family now to this Catskills resort that changed her life, 33 years ago. If you do the numbers, that would be 1996. So are we going to pepper this thing with late 90s music? And you have no Swayze.
Yeah.
Patrick's gone. That's the larger issue. How do you replace it? How do you even it's just going to be sad.
Yeah, I think
because she's going to go back to this place, and it's like, oh yeah, no, he died of cancer, and sorry. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know, but there you go. Any Dirty Dancing fans out there excited? I guess we'll see. And that's all the news I got.
Oh, I got a little tidbit. She-Hulk casting.
What?
Yeah, they are looking at Allison Brie.
She's not green.
She's not green, and she's not imposing. So they are going to have to play her as a CG character, I would think, if they're going with Allison Brie as the human half of She-Hulk. Now, I'm disappointed. I was so in Gina Carano's camp to play She-Hulk, and I think that she could do it. Mm-hmm. It was like loving her on The Mandalorian and in Deadpool. I was so hoping that they would look at her for She-Hulk, but it didn't happen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is Disney Plus show?
Yes, and they're looking at this character, from what I understand, is going to play a major role in the MCU going forward.
Really?
As a member of the Avengers, I believe.
Okay. Well, she was an Avenger, and then she was a Fantastic Four. She replaced Thing for quite a while. All right. I don't know. You know what it is? I'm thinking more along the John Byrne line of the comics, which was Deadpool before Deadpool was Deadpool, in the sense that she broke the fourth wall, and it was really kind of a comical take on the character. But she was once she transformed into her green self, like she never went back to her human self.
No. And what was her name? Is her Jennifer
Gray Walters? I think maybe you're right, Jennifer Walters.
But she was a lawyer, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, yeah. Interesting.
I have two things.
All right.
One of them I was surprised you didn't bring up, which is Nia DaCosta, who directed the new Candyman, which I am
good. There you go.
Really anticipating anyway.
It was on top of my news item. I chose not to.
You chose not to.
I did.
To divulge that one.
Well, it's sometimes there's so much stuff we get into.
You don't want to encourage us to actually make you watch Candyman.
Well,
no, I'm not watching Candyman. We're not doing that. We'll herald Nia DaCosta for her prowess on the.
So she's gonna direct Captain Marvel too,
which I actually like, and Megan McDonald is writing it.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see her take on Candyman. Guys, Candyman is a Chicago story, which means I'd be there in 2.5 seconds.
Is this
anyway.
the Willy Wonka autobiography?
It doesn't have the Sammy Davis as its lead single.
It's a new feature. You might have to see it.
No, there's new movies coming. What we just say about Mulan? Yeah.
And then my other news, which is my girlfriend, Janelle Monáe, her movie, Antebellum, which as you know, was one of my most anticipated films of the year. I mentioned this in December. They've now moved it to video on demand, so it will be out on September 18th. And I think this is probably the right decision for that movie because, again, nobody really knows what's happening with theaters.
Right.
And even if they're able to get the movie into theaters, it will just be overwhelmed by tentpoles.
Yeah, the bigger ones, yeah. And I think, this is a smart move. And it looks intriguing.
And this is a different situation than Mulan and Tenet, and what we are wondering if these are going to be streaming. A movie like Antebellum, which is on a smaller scale, I think has the opportunity for a bigger audience on streaming.
Yeah, I agree.
The theater.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So cool. Awesome. That's a lot of news. That was like a whole show right there.
So much news.
Christina, I have to applaud you on your choice of co-feature. Because it's all about the gold in these two movies.
Perfect, right?
It is perfect.
Yeah, no. But we're going to talk about the first one, right?
Yes.
Five Bloods.
The Five Bloods.
Spike Lee.
Netflix.
And this
I don't remember this. That's pretty big for Spike Lee to drop a movie on Netflix. And I don't remember hearing anything about this.
Apparently, it was supposed to get a limited theatrical release, like something similar to what The Irishman
Yeah.
Okay.
had done, but because the theatrical release was supposed to happen around the time that COVID started spreading and there was lockdown, they just brought it directly to Netflix. But Netflix.
It was supposed to also air in the Cannes Film Festival, correct?
Yes.
But not as part of the competition. It's just a special airing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I just want to say right up front that if Delroy Lindo is not nominated for a Best Actor Oscar for this movie, then there's no justice.
He is the high point of this. He is the focal point, and you get infuriated with his character. You love his character. You hate his character. You go through a bunch of different emotions with him playing Paul.
Yes. He's so good. He's so powerful. So vulnerable too. Like, I think, his character, I just think he just gives such a tour de force performance in this movie. I was just blown away by him completely. I mean, I love him anyway, but he's fantastic in this movie.
Just a little bit of setup here. It's a very straightforward story. This platoon of black soldiers that served in Vietnam under Stormin' Norman, played by Black Panther himself, Chadwick Boseman. So he is the platoon's leader. Very self-sufficient. They're not, you never see them in the flashbacks with any other soldiers. It's just the 5 of them.
Yeah, I find that really interesting.
Because it's explained, because they're black soldiers, they're kind of thrown out on the front lines and they're doing their own thing. And they have a mission in the flashbacks in Vietnam to recover the remains of a crashed CIA plane, because there's gold on this plane that's meant to be paid.
Gold in them there hills.
The gold is meant for the Vietnamese as payment for their help to the American soldiers in the conflict.
Yeah, how would you like to be paid? Gold bars, please. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got it.
So they've got to go. They've got to fight the Viet Cong to get to this gold, because when they get there on the scene, there's already Viet Cong in the jungle that are also ascending to try to get this gold. And they have to fight them back to get the gold out. And they consider the situation, and they feel that they want to take the gold. And per Stormin, they want to take it for the help of the civil rights movement back in the U.S. So somehow they want to get this gold, hide it, and then come back to it. But unfortunately, what happens is that the area is napalmed. All of their
right.
I'll say
There's a
lose all their
mudslide.
landmarks.
Landmarks. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes,
landmarks. Ding, 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 ding.
They lose all their
Landmarks for
natural
1,000,
landmarks,
Alex.
so they don't know where the gold is buried. So, and then of course Norman's character is killed accidentally by Paul, and that's, you don't know that until but you realize that that's really what's driving his psyche, and that's what is wrong with this character. That his PTSD is all based around the friendly fire that's coming from his gun, and that kills Norman. So on the surface, they're coming back now in the current timeline to go find Norman's remains, but the ulterior motive is to find the gold. So that's the setup of the movie, is that they're reconvening, the 4 of them in Vietnam, to find Norman and the gold.
This movie bites off a lot, because it's not it's partially about the civil rights movement in the 60s. It's partially about Black Lives Matter now. It's partially about the enduring legacy of war. You have this subgroup that's trying to get rid of landmines, right? You see kids that are still been affected by the mines that have been left behind. It takes on PTSD. It takes on just a tremendous amount of issues and subtext, and even with Otis, he finds out he has a daughter who he never knew about, who was left behind in country. And I mean,
it's a lot to chew on. He's really throwing a lot at you here.
I was sort of captivated by the story, the characters, but also I was impressed by how much he was trying to weave into the story,
Yeah, and he does it very well. First and foremost, this is a very entertaining movie.
Yes.
I never once, and I kind of joked about this, but it's true. because it's got a 2.5-hour runtime, I had to split it over 3 nights so I wouldn't fall asleep. That's saying nothing against the movie. I just do that for anything that I watched that, after a certain time of night. And I was always excited to come back to it, to see where it was happening, where it was going.
Well, right. A 2.5-hour movie. You're like, all right, there's a lot.
But, in most of Spike Lee's movie, he's trying to impart a message, as Christine was saying, and he's throwing little bits of, Martin Luther King's speech. And as the characters are talking about historical figures, you get a little snippet of that historical figure.
Yeah. So it's, even at the opening montage of all the little, initially, because the movie is Five Bloods, and then whenever they were showing like Fall of Saigon or Kennedy assassination, the little title would be Fall of Saigon. And I'm like, oh, he's taking himself way too seriously right up front. So, but I don't know if he was just having fun with it, but I did catch that I don't know. But yeah, there's all these little historical things dropped in there as well. So, it's like you said, the subtext is really a lot.
And I think the important thing too is that, he's really making an effort to look at the war straight on, and the amount of atrocities that, American soldiers committed in that war. I mean, obviously there's clips right at the beginning, the famous devastating clip of the Vietnamese soldier being shot.
Point blank assassination.
But that's amazing because I mean that still photo is very iconic. But I never realized that there was footage.
Yeah.
And
this is not the first movie that I've seen that incorporated.
Oh, really? But that was really because that was really the first war that was like televised. Like I mean, we were little tiny kids at the time, but I do remember sitting in front of the television with my dad and asking what's going on. And of course the answer was like, shut up and maybe you'll learn something. Well, I had no point of reference to what I was watching. I didn't know what,
Now, that what's funny is that before it's revealed that Paul is the one that killed Norman, he obviously has issues with the locals, because there's that scene where they're on the boat and the merchant is trying to sell them chickens, and he is not having he does not accept the word no. Yeah. And Paul gets very upset. So I was thinking that something had happened in the past, like that was akin to that assassination footage, that Paul did something that's the reason why he has this PTSD. I didn't really tie it with the Norman until you actually see that that's what happened. But yeah, they all have their issues that they're dealing with coming back.
But imagine, I mean, it's enough baggage as it is, and you survive. So, the survivor's guilt, but then to go back there after all those years, it's got to just dredge that stuff up.
And Paul's character is so complicated because he talks very often. I mean, he's a Trump voter. That's like something
that
that's
is the first number one character trait right there. He's got
that. Was interesting.
And he talks the way he talks about America, the way he talks about Trump. He talks. It's gonna sound weird, but he talks like a white person. He doesn't talk like a person who's experienced the oppression that he's experienced. And like when he talks to DeRoche about World War II, he's sort of bought into this mythology of America the Great, America the Savior, when truthfully the legacy of our foreign policy since World War II has been problematic at best. And, there's a lot of irony of him buying into this mythology when the movie is telling you at every turn that America has rejected and degraded people who look like him. So it just adds this extra layer to his character. And then we forgot to talk about the fact that his son shows up. His son comes to join the mission. And it turns out that he's got this incredibly complicated relationship with his son, and his son feels that his father has rejected him his whole life because his mother died in childbirth. Yeah, and there's at one point when Paul reveals to Otis that he can't love his son. And it makes sense that the son shows up. It's, not only is he there I don't know how much he knows about what they're actually doing there. Right. But he's trying to impress his father. He wants to be part of his father's life and maybe to look out for him on this trip. Yeah, it's just, there's so much going on. And then when they finally find the gold, it's like they all get dragon sickness. Eddie wants to return the gold to the cause. He's like, that's what Norman wanted.
That's what Norman
Right,
wanted.
that's what Norman wanted, yeah.
That's the reason we were taking it back then.
Right, correct.
And Otis is like, yeah, you're right. That's what Norman wanted. And then Melvin's like, I'm going to return it to my cause. And Paul's like, I'm going to do whatever I want because I'm the one who has the handgun. And
You win. Okay.
But yeah, it's like right away the gold becomes a divider, and their very close relationship where it's like throughout up to this point, they've just kept affirming that they're together, they're in this together.
Yeah,
but it's interesting that none of them want what this gold was originally intended for, which was the Vietnamese people. And when the gunmen come at the end and they say that this belongs to us, they're right. It did belong to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it
was there the whole time. You could have found it.
They're stealing this gold from someone else.
Right.
Oh, basically, yeah.
I very much doubt that if DeRoche takes it, he's giving it to the Vietnamese people.
No.
Right.
Everybody has very selfish purposes for the gold.
Mm-hmm. And the Vietnamese, when they show up, they're like, My, like, do you know about My, the massacre? And then Spike Lee shows you pictures of the massacre. They go by so quick, they're almost subliminal, but like he makes sure that you see, we did some bad stuff over there.
Well, not just there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to NPR the other day and they were talking about, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And you're basically, that's a war crime in this day and age, what we did to these people.
Yes. Agreed.
It's horrific. And there was a lady, she was a little tiny child, and just her firsthand account of seeing people walking down the street with missing limbs and flesh like falling off their bodies from being exposed to this bomb. It just, this is the stuff that gets glossed over. Yeah, America's great. It's like, okay, well.
Right. And that's why I think Paul's character is so interesting, because he's bought into this mythology. He gives DeRoche this lecture about how America saved the French during World War II and blah, blah, blah. And but then the movie keeps telling you, like, hey, America isn't perfect. America's done a lot of bad things. So
history's written by the winners, right?
Yeah. And you could see how it kind of, that mentality kind of maybe soothes his PTSD, or it speaks to it in some way, because as I was saying before, he obviously has trouble with the locals. Speaking to that immigration issue is something that feeds into Paul's mindset. So it's understandable why he thinks the way that he does.
This is the most political we've ever gotten on the show, by the way.
I know.
Well, the movie's political.
It's very much.
You
can't watch a single Spike Lee movie without at least touching on these.
But I also like the fact that he gives each of the Bloods their own personality. So it's not just like a platoon, and they're all for one.
Right. It's like awful. Yeah. Although they did say at one point, five Bloods don't die, we multiply. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and it's not, it's not light fare by any means.
It reminded me of Stand By Me a lot.
I can see that.
Those character archetypes, and like singing Marvin Gaye instead of singing Lollipop.
I guess you can't. I was gonna say, I guess you can't have a group of guys and not. We need to talk about Jean Reno.
Yeah, as DeRoche.
Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, it's a professional. There he is.
Yeah, and not quite looking like he did in The Professional.
That was 30 years ago.
I had to think to myself,
let's go look and see what I look like 30 years ago.
I think that's him. Is that him?
Yeah, that was him.
He's a little older.
A little older.
One thing I like, there's a couple things I really liked, that in the flashbacks, the characters played themselves as they are now.
This really confused the hell out of me, because I watched this last night when I probably shouldn't have been watching movies because I was exhausted, but all for the show. And the only giveaway that it was a flashback was the fact that he changed the framing ratio from your standard widescreen down to the old school
and he's filming it 16 millimeter as well.
Yeah. It was a very nice, but it was kind of jarring, because at first you're like, wait a minute, why are they shooting? Because it is a little off-putting at first, because you're like, yeah, they're playing themselves younger, but
because of that ratio change, you know exactly when it's a flashback and when it's not.
Well, that's the device he uses, and once you realize that, then it's like, all right, cool, now I'm in. I get it. But it was a little jarring at first, and you're just like,
you know what's funny?
I miss something here?
It would have taken it. it would have taken me out of the movie more if they had used different actors or did the CGI de-aging. I
Right.
think it's more acceptable to see them
once you
playing
realize
their
what he's
20-year-old
doing.
selves
Yes. Yeah.
than the other options that we would have had.
Yeah.
But I like it too because to a certain extent, it reflects that it's a memory. It's a memory that
Right,
they're
correct,
having in
yeah.
the present day.
Right. Yeah.
Because
So,
that's the way that your memory works, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking of yourself now, putting yourself back
Yeah.
in that memory.
Right. I
Right.
don't look like I'm 13 years old.
Right. So I really like that he did that. And they decided to use the cinematographer proposed using the 16 millimeter camera and film stock because that was what was available during the era.
During that time, yeah. Anybody else waiting for a velociraptor to come out of that jungle? Predator,
No.
maybe?
The issues that I had with it, like in the beginning, I was thinking, okay, some of this acting is wonky. Is once they get back into the jungle, then I was fully invested. And the fact that the landmine team, that character of Hetty seemed just to exist for David. Now, Christina, I'm very interested to hear your take on that. But the reason that she exists in this movie, I think, is barely more than to prop up David's character.
Which is so funny because I thought that she was there basically to demonstrate the legacy of French colonialism in that part of the...
Wow. That's a lot of baggage to put on one woman.
And forget about Zeppo. Like, I'm like, I wanted his mustache and his little soul patch to exit, and thankfully it does.
I mean, because that's the thing that everyone forgets is that Vietnam was French colony. So I thought that her character was in the movie. She even calls herself a guilt-ridden bourgeoisie cliche, right? That she was basically in the movie to bring that sort of legacy of French colonialism to the fore. And she doesn't end up as his romantic interest.
No, but she tends to him throughout as if she's his own personal nursemaid, even though he's already, at gunpoint tied her up and her two companions.
Well, I had a feeling at that point when he'd been shot, she's helping him because she's the one who's not going to carry a gun, because now they're in the ruin and the remaining Bloods, because at this point Eddie has been devastatingly blown up by a landmine.
And you knew that was coming, that he was either going to get shot or something was going to happen as he's waving his arms. And
Well, I watched Kelly's Heroes before this, so I knew that there was landmines.
Yeah. And then when David steps on the landmine, that scene is so tense.
I actually, that was like, I'm like, holy, you're really going to yank this guy off the freaking, he's a fly like Moses, baby.
But then, of course, who comes into the scene at the exact right second are the landmine team, right? Whoa, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a bad way to go.
But this is,
and this Melvin, when he throws himself on that grenade at the end.
I know. I was so sad. Because something about Melvin, something about the way the actor plays him, he just seems, I don't want to say like soft necessarily,
he's the Vern
like,
character. He's the Vern character from Stand By Me.
Yeah. He's sort of cuddly, and like you can just imagine him just sort of compartmentalizing the war, like putting it away and kind of moving on with his life. Whereas Paul is still lugging the war around with him. Paul's the only one who, when he shows up, is wearing his Vietnam veteran hat, and he's like, he's really invested in this idea that he was a soldier. He talks about how the fact that he did 3 tours over and over. But Mel is like, he just seems like a cuddly suburban dad, and it was just devastating to see him do that, especially after they talked earlier about how I'm not throwing myself on any grenade for you.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, telegraph that one loud.
So explain this to me, because I lost this. How did they get Norman's remains out? Did they leave him there and go back? Was he in one of their backpacks?
They didn't show it.
They didn't show it, yeah.
Because they were supposed to get him and not the gold. But
right, correct.
They knew they had the gold in their backpacks, but where's Norman?
Who's got room for Norman? I'm not dropping this gold.
When all the guys are carrying the gold in the packs, it reminds me of the Hidden Fortress.
Yes, I thought of that as well.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, they can hardly walk because they have all the
Yep.
gold on their backs, and especially poor Otis, right, who's already in pain and can barely walk, and now he's got this gold on his back that's literally curving his spine.
What are they,
Eddie's
like 42
pigeon-toed.
pounds? Are they
Eddie's
like
pigeon-toed, right? He can hardly walk too.
The monologue that Paul gives in the jungle, where he gives it right to the camera.
That was very powerful. That was that sequence when he's talking right to camera.
Especially because then you find out that he's got cancer.
Yeah.
You know, he's got cancer, and it's because of all the chemicals that were dropped during the war, and
Agent
that
Orange.
he doesn't want to die that way. He wants to choose the way he's going to die. He's like, I'm going to decide, you know, when I go. And of course, he's like half out of his mind at this point, walking through the jungle by himself. He's left everybody behind. He's completely paranoid.
That's why he leaves in the first place.
Yeah.
He doesn't trust Vin to take him to the ruins. And this poor guy, all he is a tour guide. Now
I know.
right?
he's
Yeah.
recruited into the Five Bloods at the end.
He's like, I have no motivation here. I'm just trying to like get you back, you know.
And what a tour guide he is. He's like, all right, let's hole up in the ruins. We're gonna get you out of this.
Yeah.
No matter who I have to kill. And Paul loses the gold, which is funny to me as well, because especially his relationship with David. That's why I was so ping-ponging with his, you know, do I like this guy or do I hate him, this character? Because he tells Otis straight up that he cannot love David. He's physically incapable of loving David, yet that note that he leaves contradicts that.
Says
You're like,
otherwise,
did he love him or not? You know, is he lying in the note just to make David feel better?
I don't know that he knows. But I think Lindo does such a great job of conveying all that complexity. You know, he's a whole person. He's not a good person. He's not a bad person. He's a person. He's a whole person. And I think you so rarely see this in films. You know, we're always trying to align people in like slots and say they're this type or they're that type and they're this kind of thing and they're that kind of thing. But he's, you know, he is a complete person, and he just does such a great job of making you feel those feelings, Jim. You know?
Yeah, it's true. So that's why it's fascinating to me looking at the various actors that were asked to play these roles. So we almost didn't get him in Paul. I don't know who was going to play who, but Sam Jackson was unable to be in this movie. Giancarlo
I'm glad he wasn't in it.
Don Cheadle, I don't know who he would have played because he's not as old as the characters should have been.
Right.
John David Washington, I can only assume was going to play the David character because of his youth.
Right.
Was asked, but he was busy as well.
I thought all four of these guys were like perfectly cast. And I felt that you definitely had a sense that there was a history there and that they, there was a camaraderie. There was
Yeah, agreed.
It was very entertaining. I think if we're ready at this point, I would probably go like 3 1/4 buckets. I was happy with it.
I would give it 3. Yeah.
I was quite impressed. I was gonna give it like 4 1/4.
Nice. Okay.
I was very engaged. I was very moved.
So we're moving on. After the concession stand, we're going to come back and talk about another gold heist, but this one's set in World War II with Kelly's Heroes.
Today we're interviewing a stomach.
Hello there.
What is life like as a stomach?
Oh, boy, it was humdrum. I mean, until what's-his-name discovered Tony's Pizza.
Tony's Pizza?
Yeah, I was suffering from the pizza cravings until Tony's came along. Crispy crust and zesty sauces. Wow.
And so now... What's that?
Another pizza craving. Just thinking about Tony sets it off.
Oh, where are you going?
He's going to get a Tony's Pizza, and I follow him anyway.
Does your stomach send you pizza craving signals? Oh, wow. Tony's, the Pizza Cravers Pizza. Available at the concession stand.
Okay, we are back and talking about Kelly's Heroes. And this was Christina's pick. And we all kind of did a round robin, and we all picked something to go along with the Five Bloods. And we spun the wheel of chance, and Kelly's Heroes came up.
And it was a damn good choice.
It was.
I enjoyed this.
Now, let's
immensely.
talk about your family history with this, because apparently you've got a long history with this movie.
Yeah, so I was kind of surprised that neither of you guys had seen this. This was
No.
a movie that my parents loved and that I saw very, very young on video, obviously, because it came
Right.
out in 1970. I want to say by the time I was 10 or 11, I had seen it. I remember quoting this movie for most of my life,
That's funny.
especially Donald Sutherland.
He is so over the top in
Yeah.
this. He
I
is
don't know
just
what kind of accent he is
oddball.
portraying. Obviously, he's trying to do some kind of a New York thing, but
I don't
it's
know. He went all in on it,
weird.
though.
Yeah.
He went all in on it.
Negative waves.
Negative
Always
waves.
with the negative waves, Mario.
Knock it off with
So
those
early in the
negative
morning.
waves. It's almost like like he's getting to like a Brooklynese kind of an accent, but he's not quite there. But you know
No.
he's in the ballpark. He's trying to hit that.
But this movie, this is just a movie that I've come back to over and over and over again throughout my life.
I can
It's-
see it being rewatchable.
It's very rewatchable. Like, it's very entertaining.
It's one of these, like, you can only get these types of movies in the 60s, 70s with the ensemble cast of
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Right?
cavalcade of stars. I mean, they were all, well, Gavin McLeod, maybe not so much at that point, but
My husband had never seen it, and when I first met him, I made him watch it, and then it became a favorite of his. And like,
There you
our
go.
son has watched it like several times in his life, so it's just passing it down now to the
there
next
you go.
generation.
This is definitely a movie that I could see watching with my grandfather on a Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just or even as a kid, I could probably appreciate it for what it was, and it's, you know.
But
it's
I've seen
fun.
plenty of, World War II movies, but this one has just eluded me, and I don't know why.
And it's got should we talk about the plot a little bit so that
Yes.
people kind of know what's going on in this movie?
Gold.
So yeah, it's
Gold.
about gold. By the way, this is based on a true story.
Yes, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, which is great.
And it was sourced from the Guinness Book of World Records as well.
So there's this unit, and they're technically led by Captain Maitland, who's a very hands-off captain who's much more concerned with trying to get a yacht.
Was it German or French that he was trying to steal it from? Because they were behind French lines.
Right. So he's trying to get this yacht out of enemy territory, basically, so that he can bring it home. I don't know how he's going to get it back to the States.
Because they're part of a reconnaissance mission.
That does not carry on luggage, by the way.
The whole the team is behind enemy lines because they're doing reconnaissance for the infantry. So they're not there to fight. They're there just to report back as to what's going on, and they're getting shelled by both sides.
There's a running joke with Mulligan that
Mulligan, who doesn't know where anybody actually is. But
played by Telly Savalas' younger brother, by the way.
Oh, get out of here! Oh, I didn't realize that.
So, Kelly, who was previously a lieutenant, who was given orders to attack the wrong hill. As a result, most of his men were killed, and because of that, he got busted down to private. So he goes and kidnaps a German officer and brings him back to this barn where the rest of the platoon is, which is led ostensibly by Captain Maitland, but really by Telly Savalas, who is the sergeant. And
Big Joe.
What he really wants, he's actually mad that Kelly's brought this guy back. He's like, I thought I told you to get some good-looking kid.
Right.
So, because what he wants is a tour guide, basically. They're moving into a town, and he wants to know, like, about the hotels and if there's a brothel
I thought that
there.
was really bizarre because I'm like, at first I'm like, oh, are we already looking for the treasure?
I'm asking myself, who's Nancy? Because they keep talking about Nancy.
I know,
which is the town in Germany.
The town,
they're gonna take a little bit of R&R in, once it's secured. But that's what he's telling his men. That's what Telly is telling the men, that you're gonna have 3 days off. We're going to get the best hotel. You're going to be broads. It's going to be a great time.
So he gets this German who keeps talking about the Geneva Convention. He's like, under the Geneva Convention, you cannot do this and that. He's like, sit down. I don't care about the Geneva Convention. Just tell me about the hotels and Nancy, right? And so then it's one of my favorite scenes where the German says, there's one hotel, the Majestic. And he's like, and Big Joe's like, who's the owner? He's like, I don't know. And then he
Right.
says the little joke, get the Michelin Guide.
But that's not a joke though, because apparently that's what they had to use because the Germans were blowing up bridges and destroying roads and changing signs. So the government actually was secretly reproducing these these Michelin guides, and it was like standard issue with every one of these guys, so that they knew where the real roads were.
So he gets the Michelin Guide and he starts reading like this whole thing about
Like
the
a travel log.
attractions.
It was like a whole, just get to the hotel.
He's like, oh, look, it's got a fork and spoon by the hotel.
Right.
Right.
3 stars, a knife, and a fork. So it's such a great scene. But then, you know, what he really wants is just to find out like what's in the town, right? He doesn't care about like, you know, troop movements or anything like that. But Kelly, because he used to be a lieutenant, he kind of does. So he wants to know why this German colonel, is carrying a briefcase that was, you know, handcuffed to him. And so he figures there must be some important information in there. Clearly, Kelly used to be a good officer.
Right. Well, they made it like he was railroaded. Yeah. Someone had to take the blame, they said.
So he starts going through the documents. They're all in German. He calls another soldier over, Fisher, and says, can you translate these? And as who clearly speaks German, he starts translating them. He's talking about the transport of something. And just as he gets to that line, Kelly's looking at this bar, which the German colonels claimed is a lead bar to drop the documents into the river in case he's caught. And he sees a little gleam of gold. And he's like, okay, that's enough. He takes the documents from Fisher. And Kelly realizes that the bar of gold, this is not a lead bar, it's a gold bar.
And this is what they were going to be transporting.
And this is what they're going to be transporting. Right.
Now, it begs the question. Now, is the German officer telling the truth that these weights, these gold weights are in there, or is he stealing these for himself? And he's disguised them as lead bars.
Yeah, but only one was painted, though. As he started handing them out, they're all gold bars.
He cleans them off.
He cleans them off. He scrapes them off. Yeah.
Yeah. You actually see him sitting there scraping.
I must have been taking a note. I looked down. So.
Yeah, he doesn't need to beat the guy up for this information. He can just get him drunk.
It takes him 5 minutes to get this guy drunk. He's got like the weakest constitution ever. It's like, here, take a drink.
The poor guy gets blown up by friendly fire. It's always sad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So then they have to move out from the barn, and Big Joe is furious because now they're being told they're being sent back. They're not going into Nancy.
Right.
And
by Maitland, no less. He's told they're not going into Nancy.
And little Joe's like, that's not Mulligan's mortars coming down anymore. Those are German 88s. Like, we need to get out of the area. And it's very unfortunate because it's like Maitland's so out of it. It's like, you know, Big Joe, the sergeant, the corporal, Little Joe basically have to make this decision to move the platoon away. That's the job of the captain, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
He should be, you know, ordering troop movements. Little Joe's like, I think we should move across the river. Maybe we should get out of this barn. So they go back, you know, and they go back to the encampment, and Maitland tells them, he's like, I got you guys this empty barn to have some relaxation for a few days. Yeah. And Big Joe's like, what? There's no action.
Right, he's like, no booze, no broads, no action.
And Maitland's like, you don't need that. You don't need that.
Yeah,
it's perfect. You get to relax.
Get yourself a baseball field over there. You're good to go.
Meanwhile, he's going to Paris to shop, or
right, to hide the yacht that he's stolen, and to get some stuff from Paris for the general, who is his uncle, played by Carol O'Connor in
Archie.
One of the funniest.
He is chewing up some scenery.
He is so funny in this movie. Every time I see him, I laugh.
But when he shows up in his bathrobe, and his bathrobe has epaulets,
the stars on it.
I'm like,
flash forwarding towards the end when he hears the movements on the radio, and he's so proud of these troops.
I know, because he thinks,
they're taking the initiative to drive themselves into the German forces, while he has no idea about the whole gold thing.
Right, and he's like, go, we got the game on. So they go back, they're at the encampment, and Kelly comes up with this scheme now to go behind enemy lines and get this gold out of a bank. And
he's so low key in this.
Yeah,
Eastwood.
he is.
Clint Eastwood just plays this so laid back and like just understated. Like he really has very little dialogue.
His character is a private when this movie is taking place because he's been demoted, as we said.
Right.
So,
but he uses this opportunity to really show his leadership, what he was like.
Yeah, because when he goes to crap game, which is Don Rickles, he's like, I have this deal I've been working on. Deal? You talk to one person. Now it's a deal or whatever. But he gets everything he needs.
Yeah, well, I mean, first he goes to Mulligan. I love that scene when he goes to Mulligan, and Mulligan immediately
losing his
panics.
freaking mind. Yeah. Mulligan is moving his mind. But I love the fact every time he pulls out the bar of gold, it has that that sound effect, that twinkle magical sound effect. And I'm like,
they always get it to reflect on the person's face that's looking at it as well.
Yeah.
And
there's not much else to look at.
And he's got to offer everybody a share. So by the end of
the movie,
Uncle Leo comes with all
Uncle Leo, I was so happy to see him. Hey,
there's like hundreds of guys that are going to be sharing in this loot.
Yeah.
Well, except that they don't. But
they don't because they don't.
Thing.
They don't make it to the end. I think that's part of the deal is that you have to make it there.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty audacious plan.
That's why Craft Game says he's going along. He's like, Switzerland's only 100 miles away. I don't want anybody getting lost. Yeah. So because he's in there, he's got to get Craft Game on his side because Craft Game's quartermaster, right? Yeah. He's got all the stuff.
He's got all the access to everything that he needs.
Yeah. Right. He goes in to meet Craft Game because he needs armor, he needs guns, he needs food, supplies, he needs all this stuff. Oddball is sleeping above Craft Game's desk, basically, and
I don't think he was sleeping. No.
Wow.
There was a woman with
him. He jumps down and he says, "Hey, a job like this, I bet you'd like to have some Shermans." Yeah. And so it turns out that Oddball's lieutenant, so he has 3 Sherman tanks, and their lieutenant got killed in action like 6 weeks before, and they've just been pretending that the guy's still alive.
Go with it.
So that Craft Game can collect his whiskey. As Oddball says, they're like to give the impression that they're just out of action and they're badly in need of rest and reorganization. So basically they've been camped out behind the quartermaster's tent for like 6 weeks.
The tanks were all like, they're hanging their laundry on them.
Now, and these guys look like they're
they're
time capsule 20 years in the future because they're all like long hair, especially Oddball himself.
Yeah,
they're straight from 1967, Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco. And even like the language that's used is very of the time 1970 that it was made.
He's like strung out on
like they're talking about the German because at the very end when they're thinking about bringing the Nazi that's in The Last Tiger in on the scheme. That guy's a full freak fanatic, whatever they say at the end.
You notice they never refer to them as Nazis though. They're either Krauts or Germans. Every one of these characters is freaking nuts in their own way.
There are some very heavy scenes, like the minefield.
Which
we alluded to. We're talking about the Five Bloods. But so you're reminded of the danger here on occasion, but it almost plays like a comedy.
Well, it's interesting too because the corporal, who's one of the people who dies in the minefield, when Kelly comes back to the barn and convinces all the guys it's going to be a part of it, and Big Joe did not want Kelly to tell anybody about the gold, because Joe is basically trying to protect his guys, right? Like he sees his job as like trying to keep these guys alive, and he says to Kelly, these guys only have so much luck. Like you can't be pushing it this way.
Keep pushing it, yeah.
And the corporal says, basically more or less, he says, you could go out at any time. It might as well be on this trip as another one. And they all sort of make this decision that like they've been crapped on by this war, and they know they're always at risk. So this is something that they're doing for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's in the Five Bloods too. It's this idea that this is, for us. They're trying to get the gold for Norman. And ultimately, it's not about, like a lot of World War II movies, especially, where it's sort of like about troop movements and, again, like no rah America. It's like this war's been crappy.
Yep.
We just want to get something out of this and go home. So they go off on this journey to get the gold, and of course things go wrong like right from the get, because they are shot, their vehicles are destroyed
by our own military,
by friendly fire, because they don't know it's them, right?
Right.
So they destroy the bridge as well that they have to get across to get to Claremont.
I love that when he says, "Do you mean Claremont, Booker?"
Yeah. You gotta love Telly Savalas in anything he's in, because he's coming off on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is my favorite movie of all time, as Blofeld, no less. And it's sandwiched in between two pinnacles of his career: Majesty's Secret Service and Horror Express.
Horror Express. And he never takes his helmet off.
I think, again, like, there's a lot more kind of going on here that's necessarily shown. Like, there's a lot of comic lines, but there's still, like, especially with Big Joe, there's this sense like, I just need all these guys to stay alive.
Yeah, right. He's like herding cats at this point. He's just like freaking.
Yeah, and the character of Maitland as well, because that's a throwaway comedic character, but it's like kind of like the mindset of the soldier versus the commander.
Right.
Is like, you're on the front lines while I am above you guys, and I'm not getting involved in what you're doing. And he even says at one point that penalty for looting is death. And he's taking the yacht. He's looting himself. So.
Yeah. Don Rickles is hilarious in this movie. And then they make him carry the .50 caliber.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Which is hilarious, because he probably hasn't even carried a backpack since basic training.
Right.
So
and the fact that he's always angry makes him even funnier.
Although I saw an interview recently, actually, with Donald Sutherland, because it's the 50th anniversary of this film, and he talked about how everyone had the trailers, and they were all sort of like near each other on set. And Clint Eastwood said Clint Eastwood, and then said private, like, nobody come bother me. And Don Rickles said Mr. Friendly.
Yeah. Come on in, you hockey puck.
Because Eastwood was a big star at the time, and they even paid tribute to him.
That's such a blatant Good, the Bad, the Ugly reference.
It hits you over the head with a hammer. It's like there's no subtlety about that.
But it was like that tickled me. I'm like, look at that.
Yeah, even with the Spurs sound effect.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So when they do finally get to the town, I think actually the first time you see this, I think there's quite a lot of suspense through. It's been a long time since I saw this for the first time, but maybe you guys can chime in here. I think there's quite a lot of suspense. How is this actually gonna?
Oh yeah, the guys in the bell tower.
The guys on the rooftops, and like the camera moves around, so you're giving the impression that if those guys look the right way at the right time, they're going to see him.
Yeah,
because you can see him as the audience, and
because it's actually a really tight little space that they're all kind of converging on.
So they've only got a certain amount of time before they get that Sherman and the rest of them into the town. So then they can kind of be camouflaged at that point.
You could hear these damn tanks coming a mile away, but they write that off because they had the Tigers running as well. So it was masking
and ringing
the sound.
The bell over and over and over again.
So even the dog wasn't like aware that they were coming in.
Yeah.
So that was like a tense buildup.
And there's no way that they would expect them to be coming in either, because again, they're 30 miles behind enemy lines.
There's a certain amount of complacency because the German officer walks out, and Crap Game and Willard are sitting there. Harry Dean Stanton, by the way.
Or Dean Stanton. He didn't even have Harry in his first name. What was that about?
Are there with the .50 caliber all set up on the building?
Yeah, right on the
It's right on top of the fence.
All he had to do is look forward. There it is, pointed right at him. Yeah. It's a fun movie. It really is. It's a great caper. And I watched this before I watched The Five Bloods. So The Five Bloods is a much heavier handed movie, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
And take itself too seriously. And think about Sutherland, because MASH came out that same year, did it not?
Yeah.
It did. And
That's
I confirmed that Sutherland was also in The Dirty Dozen, playing a very straight private. His character in The Dirty Dozen and his character here is night and day. Completely different.
Wow. So yeah, at the end they get their gold.
They get the gold. And you know what's funny is that Carol O'Connor is coming into the town. That was the tense part for me, when they're trying to get the gold onto the truck.
And he's zooming in on the Jeep. Yep.
And then, was it Savalas that says, "Oh, De Gaulle's coming"?
Right. Yeah, they thought he was Charles de Gaulle, and they all like swarmed
all the
him.
French surround him, and he's like, "Oh, hey!" And,
Yeah. That's a lot of bars. That's a lot of bars. I think the today's equivalent value would have been $2.4 billion.
Amazing.
So that's almost
Even
200 million per man.
In 1945, even they each get $875,000.
Yeah, that's monstrous. That's but we didn't even talk about this. So this was all filmed in Yugoslavia, and I think because at first you're like, why, but because the wreckage, I guess part of the reason was that they had a lot of this military stuff.
Yeah,
and,
working order.
But just the devastated towns that they were traveling past, and the landscape itself is such a character. And we talked about this with 1917, and the level of control that is needed. It just impresses me when you see a war movie and there's that one shot and it's just hundreds, if not thousands of extras. You got Jeeps, you got horses, you got planes flying over, you got tanks, you got civilians, and it's all working.
Yeah. Explosions on the...
you got pyrotechnics going on, and it's mind-boggling the level of detail that's going on.
I know.
It's not...
The coordination that's needed from action.
Coordination.
When you say action.
Right. All has to work.
To do their part. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, just you got to get the Jeep from point A to point B, but you got all this other stuff going on in between that it really, there's a couple times though that I giggled out loud with the Germans, especially with the guy with the boots up on the desk, because I immediately thought top secret.
Top secret.
John Landis has a cameo. He was a production assistant at the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He plays a nun. He's one of there's like 3 nuns in one of the scenes or whatever.
What was fascinating to me is that George Kennedy turned this down, the part that Telly Savalas plays. So that it could have been
Airport?
George. He didn't like the script, apparently.
Really?
So, he didn't take the role. And Ingrid Pitt, the horror queen of the 60s of Hammer films and the 70s, by the way, had a substantial part, but was written out as
I read that
on the plane to go to Yugoslavia.
Right. Hey, I got a job. I'm going.
He got a call saying, "Nope, we don't need your part. We're writing you out." Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's already a 2-hour and 20-minute film.
Yeah, they actually filmed. They had to cut out 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's edited. Actually, you know what? One of the scenes at the very end of the movie, as they're going away, someone starts screaming, "You're going the wrong way!" But they cut that out. I thought that would have been funny.
I mean, but even for a 2-hour and 20-minute film, I think it feels tight. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, The Five Bloods felt full 2.5 hours. Jim, do you know there's an Aliens connection?
No.
Yes.
Tell me. Well, Harry Dean Stanton, right?
Oh, well, that's true. I didn't even think of that. This has more to do. The Tiger Tank's engine is one of the sound effects used in Ripley's Load Lifter.
Really?
Interesting.
Yep. And as from what I understand, the tanks were pretty accurate to how they actually. I guess most of these movies they just take any tank and paint it or slap a logo on the side of it, but they were pretty accurate for the time. What it was supposed to be.
You know what dates this completely to its 1970 roots is that song "Burning Bridges."
Yeah,
they use that at first I'm like, what is this song? And then by the end of the movie, I'm like, I'm digging this song.
It reminded me of "I'd Like to Buy the World a Coke." It was that kind of a song.
Yeah, no, a little uplifting. You're like, what?
Done by what was the name of the band? Mike Curb and the Congregation.
Yeah.
And Mike Curb was the president of MGM Records at the time.
Oh, wow.
So he had his own band, and that song got it in there. I think they played it, 3 times? They played it?
3 times. Like I said, by the end of the movie, I'm like, all right, I'm digging this song. You banged it over my head to the point where I now like it.
It works.
It does. It does.
It's kind of like a marching kind of a song as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It made it to number 34 on the U.S. charts in March 1971.
Good call. Good call. I enjoyed it.
It was a success. It was the 25th highest grossing film of 1970, which doesn't sound that great, but when you look at the movies and their grosses, they were all kind of very close to each other. So it made $5.2 million at the box office, which is pretty big in terms of 1970 dollars. The original title was going to be The Warriors. So Kelly's Heroes, I think, is much more fitting to this film. So yeah, I liked it. I really did.
Yeah. I'd give it a solid 3.5.
Yeah, I would go there. 3.5. I think I would give it 3.5 as well.
I've watched this movie too many times for it to be anything less than a 4.5.
Nice.
4.5.
Yeah,
wow.
Love this movie.
That is commitment. That is.
It's funny. I think we all have a movie like that because I remember Duchess and the Dirtwater Fox just running ad nauseum on HBO, and I know that movie inside and out. And it's not a good movie by any means, but because I have that connection to it.
I mean, this movie. This is one of those things where it was sort of like with Yojimbo, where I didn't really have to watch the movie again before the show,
right?
Because I could probably tell you the whole movie with the dialogue.
Right.
So I've watched it.
Do you have the double feature Blu-ray?
No, I do not have the double feature Blu-ray.
Because that's what I got from the library. It's coupled with When Eagles Dare, and it's a beautiful transfer. It's like crisp Technicolor, and it really pops.
I mean, I had the DVD from my library, and it was okay. I didn't think it was bad.
I have the DVD, which I've had for years, so I don't know. It didn't even occur to me to go and look, because I don't think I would invest in the Blu-ray unless there was some kind of features.
Bonus,
yeah.
There's not. So, all right. So our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
Is not war-based, where you'd think we probably would have gone, but we're just going to throw out a random question. Again.
What would have been if it was war-based? Our favorite war moment? Because we've experienced war.
So we're going to ask ourselves, since we are still steeped in summer here, 2020, our favorite summer vacation. I was thinking more for my childhood, but we don't have to restrict it to that. It could be...
since it was your choice, you should go first.
And again, I did restrict this to my childhood. I've had wonderful family vacations in the past 10 years that rank right up there with me, even more so than what I'm going to divulge. I was thinking more childhood vacations, so I'm going to name the 1986 summer trip that I took with my family to Disney World. And it was a car ride. So I was in the back with my stepsister and stepbrother, and I was probably 15, and they were a couple years, my sister was a couple years younger than I was. She was maybe 10, 11 at the time, and my brother was maybe 4 or 5. So this was at the prime age where you're fighting with your siblings. While it was not the most pleasant of rides, we were using my brother as a communicator, like to both punch each other, my sister and I, like punch her in the arm, and then she'd be like, punch him in the arm.
Like in the dad's seat.
So I kind of look back at that fondly now. And it was the summer that I was first discovering David Bowie as well. And I had my Walkman, and it was the first time I had listened to Hunky Dory. So in that car ride all the way down to Florida, I was listening to that album over and over and over again. And I was in some kind of transcendent state. I was not in that car.
You were hunky dory?
I was hunky dory. I was not in that car. And I feel so mournful for those times because I wish I could listen to that album for the first time again and get that feeling. You know, and I still love it, but it's not like a life-changing thing anymore. Yeah. So I really long for those times, those innocent times back then. And of course, then there was the whole Disney vacation, which was icing on the cake. That was when we stayed at Fort Wilderness. We were camping out, and there was a deluge one night that just poured down on our tents, and it seeped into the sand that the campground was situated on, and these sand fleas came out of the sand and were just swarming our tents, and we had to actually go to a local hotel. We couldn't stay there anymore.
Wow.
It was so bad. But while we were there, river country was still there, so we went there every day. I got sunburned so bad I still have freckles on my shoulders from the blisters that I got. So it doesn't sound like a great vacation.
Wow,
but it was.
You really put a shine on that.
My gosh, river country. I loved river country.
Yeah, wasn't it great?
It was so much. I think I have such fond memories of going, because we first went to Disney World when I was 13. But it wasn't just a water park. It seemed like a little wilder somehow because it was outside and there were trees all around, and it just felt, more like a place where kids would go without adults around.
Yeah. And I was 15, so once we got into the Magic Kingdom, I remember when we were, Epcot was there at that time. So we split our time in between the two parks and then River Country. But when we were at the Magic Kingdom, they wanted to go to the more little kid attraction. So they let me go and they said, meet us back here at the end of the day. So that was amazing as well, to be able to do what I wanted in Disney World with nobody else there. And I remember riding the Skyway from Tomorrowland to Fantasyland, and I had to share it with a couple that was from, I think, either Georgia or Florida, somewhere, one of the southern states, because there were so many people there. I had to share it with them. And I was explaining that I was from New York, and they kept thinking that I was from the city. I'm like, no. I
have family upstate who still ask me how city life is. I give up on trying to tell them I don't live in the Empire State Building. So yeah,
I felt like a big shot, like on my own for that day.
There you go. Ooh, big city boy out for the day.
Yep.
Oh, by
so that's mine. That's my vacation. 86 to Disney World. Who wants to go next?
You can go, Jeff.
Well, I am extremely jealous that Jim has childhood vacation memories because we never went anywhere.
Oh.
The only place we ever went was Easter weekend. We would go to my aunt's house in Ohio, and that was it. But since I'm a grown adult and I have children, we go on vacation every year. And even when I start, Trish was my wife. From the minute she found out I had never been to Disney, she made it a point in '96 to take me. So that was pretty cool. I was 30 years old, but I finally got to go. And we've taken the kids back twice. And I always said I would never take my kids until they learn to walk on their own. It doesn't matter. The older they got, the worse they got. So, but we've gone to Key West, Scotland, Turks and Caicos. But last year we went to Alaska as a family with my brother and sister-in-law and my nephew. And it was probably the greatest trip of my life. I absolutely loved it. Weather-wise, I can't stand the heat. So to be mid-50s, 60s every day was right in my happy zone. And we saw everything. We did a land tour. We didn't take the cruise ship. We flew into Anchorage and basically we're on a little travel bus with 11 people total. The tour guide was with us. She lived there the whole way, and we would stay in different places every day. Sometimes there'd be a hotel or there'd be like cabins in the woods or whatnot and everything in between. And we saw it all. It was great. I loved it.
So I had a little bit of trouble with this only because my parents did a lot of off-season vacations, like
So
not
really
in the summer. And as adults, my husband and I feel like we, especially because I homeschool my son, so we travel. A lot of times we travel in October when everyone else is back at school, and
That's summer in Australia.
And we've done like quite a lot of great trips, but when I was trying to limit it to summer, I did think about some childhood ones that I remember fondly, but I think an actual summer vacation that we took with our son that I have really, really fond memories of, weirdly, is going to South Dakota. First of all, it was not on our radar to go there. Our son, who was about 7 at the time, was reading this book series called Geronimo Stilton.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know those books, Jeff?
Yeah, Ben has them all. Yeah.
Yep. So he loved the Geronimo Stilton books, and if you're not familiar with them, there's a mouse who's a journalist, and he travels all over the world doing different things. And one of the places he goes in one of the books is South Dakota. And he goes to Wind Cave, and he goes to Jewel Cave, and he goes to Mount Rushmore, and he does all this stuff. And our son was like, I really want to go there. So we do a lot of camping and hiking. So I was like, it's about 16-hour drive. Like, that's doable. Then I realized that if we went to the Black Hills in South Dakota, that we would be very near Deadwood, which was a place I had always wanted to go to because I love the TV show Deadwood. And more importantly, we would only be an hour away from the
World's largest ball of mud.
no, from Devil's Tower, which
Oh,
I
yes.
love.
There you go.
Which I love because of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That was actually the highlight of the trip for
Sure.
me. So we camped in campground outside of Deadwood first, and we stayed there for like 3 days, and then we moved down to the Black Hills so we could be closer to like Rushmore, Wind Cave, all that kind of stuff. We went to the Badlands. The Badlands are amazingly beautiful if you've never been there. And Deadwood, the campground outside of Deadwood, was sort of nestled in this canyon, and there were just like these tall pines all around, and it was just so beautiful. But going out to Devil's Tower was amazing because there's not a lot on the landscape going up to it. It's, you know, there's some rolling hills, but then all of a sudden you start to see this thing rising out of the horizon, you know, and it's tiny, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, you go right behind a hill and you don't see it for a while, and then you come out again and it's bigger.
Wow.
You know, and it's there, and it's just such a really cool place to visit. And we hiked all around the base of the tower. There are little prairie dog villages, which are delightful.
No dead cows?
No dead cows.
Okay, good. Government's moved down.
Now, did they restrict your movements? Is there a certain point you can't climb up past?
It's a national monument, right? I mean, a national park.
You can climb the tower, like with, you know, climbing equipment, but you need a permit, obviously. You can't just be like, I'm going to climb today. If you don't have a permit, you can climb the boulder field at the base of the tower. And then there's a sign where it basically says you can't go any farther unless you have a permit.
At a squirrel suit, could I jump off the top?
Probably they would not give you a permit for that.
Once I'm up there, they can't stop me.
But the Badlands especially was really gorgeous. The Badlands are like half an hour. If you're driving west, they're like a half an hour before you get to the Black Hills. They were so beautiful that we felt like a day wasn't enough. So when we were coming back to Chicago, you know, it's a long drive, 16 hours. We got up very, very early in the morning. We actually got up well before sunrise so that we could arrive in the Badlands at sunrise and drive through it again on the way back home because it's so gorgeous there.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, we're going on vacation with you next year.
Yeah, that was a vacation that was, I really had to convince my husband to go. Because he was like, South Dakota, like, why do we want to do this?
I know, it's Badlands, Black Hills, Devil's Tower. It doesn't sound like a fun place at all.
And, but, you know, and it was totally because our son had read Geronimo Stilton.
Right.
But we ended up having some of the best memories that we have as a family from going there.
Did they have a gift shop at Devil's Tower?
Yes, there's a gift
shop. They did.
At Devil's Tower.
Did you get a Close Encounters mug at the gift shop?
I did not.
Oh, they probably have coffee mugs shaped like the tower.
Yeah, they probably do. Yep.
If not, they better get on that.
Yeah.
It's my idea.
All right, so next week.
All right. What the hell are we doing next week?
It's 1 week before this glut of movies just washes over us like a wave. So what we're going to do, we spun the wheel of chance. We started from 1950 right up until 2019, spun the wheel, and whatever year came up, of all those years, we were going to pick 2 movies to cover for you. Now, each of us picked one, and then we spun the wheel again, and from those 3 picks, we came up with 2 movies to cover next week. So for 1970, we are going to cover the Disney classic, The Aristocats, first of all.
Nice. Which
was released in December of that year. And then we're going to cover, and I think this is his debut.
This is his debut. He doesn't even use his last name.
This is well before Pumping Iron. Arnold Schwarzenegger's first film, and that was released in America anyway, Hercules in New York.
And I've never seen this, so I have
Neither
no
have I.
attachment.
Neither have I.
Other than going through the list of movies that came out in 1970, and I'm just kind of like, I almost went with Bigfoot. Just nothing that jumped out at me that was like, oh, we need to talk about this.
So 1970 happens to be the year that I was born. So we could parlay this into another series. We could each do the year that we were born.
Oh my!
Coming off of this.
Oh.
But next week it will be 1970, and then after that we're getting into Bill and Ted, we're getting into Mulan, we're getting into Phineas and Ferb, and then maybe Tenet if we can all see it. So
and Antebellum.
And Antebellum, that's right. So we're going to start again on a weekly basis reviewing new movies.
Wow, new content.
Which I can't wait for.
Well, I mean, The Five Bloods was new content. So. All right, cool. I'm excited.
Come back, please. Listen.
Yes, please.
1970, and then we're going to get into new releases again.
We got to start figuring out what we're going to pair them up with.
So thank you for listening. Oh, yes. and I have to say thank you to Anthony for reaching out to us via email. You will be getting a little box of TMI swag coming to you.
Swag.
So if anybody wants to reach out, tell us how we're doing. Maybe make a request for a movie that you would like to hear us cover.
We were unable to answer his question. Is that correct?
Well, you threw out RoboCop. He gave us a quote that he was thinking was from a movie, but he wasn't quite sure. And Google didn't really help that much.
No, Google didn't help at all. But apparently it is a famous quote that is used at the beginning of a song, and a lot of people have dug trying to figure it out. Yeah. Okay, we're going to put this out to our listening audience because
we couldn't figure it out.
Here is the quote. Global controls will have to be imposed, and a world governing body will have to be made to enforce them. Crisis precipitate change. It is the opening clip for a song sung by Deltron 3030. Yeah. I do not know who they are.
Never heard of it.
No, but if you know, there's a fair amount of people who are trying to track down this clip. So we weren't really sure what was being asked of us here. So,
but let us know if anybody out there says, "Hey, I know what that's from." Email us TMI Podcast,
and we'll let the rest of the world know
at gmail.com. That's TMI Podcast 2018 at gmail.com.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Cool.
We will talk.
I gotta go out. I gotta figure out how to spend all this gold.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Don't hit me with that negative lower energy, man.